All right, so let's talk about game title and genre, which are the first two sections of your GDD that you're going to be completing for the course. So let's talk about what a genre is. I'm not sure if you've had a discussion about this in another class or not, but a game genre can loosely be defined as a cultural methodology to categorize video games based on technical aspects of the interactive experience. So genres often come about as a shorthand to describe and understand games via developers, platforms, audience, press, and community. So this is a really communal definition of what a game is. So I have some further reading here. You can check that out if you want to, but this is just a paper that kind of defines game genres. And the author, Clearwater, he says that genres are a method of categorization used to better understand or comprehend a collection of cultural artifacts. And he also says that genre classification has long been recognized as an important guide that both fans and producers use to guide consumption and gauge popularity and profitability. So these are used often as a marketing and categorization tool. So on social media or by platforms, by press and media and streamers, and by audiences. It's also used to help guide and focus development efforts and keep everyone on the same page. Although, as you'll see in further lectures, we have other tools as developers that we're going to use to define our games as well. So genre is very broad. It's just a starting point, but it does kind of help to focus you in. And ultimately, it's a shorthand, it's a starting place, and we'll go into more details on specifics throughout the course. And it will probably be refined as you go along. Even if not by you, it may be refined by your fans. If you look on Steam, there are tags that you can use to categorize games. Basically, they more or less fall under genre constructs. They also describe a number of other things like narrative themes and visual aspects and that sort of thing. But what you'll find is that as a developer, you can define a certain number of tags for your game, but players of your game can also define tags for that game, and the ones that populate on your store page are the ones that have a broad level of agreement between both the fans and the developer. So your genre can even change after your game comes out potentially. So I do want to make a distinction between game genre and film genre. So film genre tends to be focused on the style of narrative or setting. So you might have a category like comedy, action, western, or sci-fi. I mean, you can use those words to describe games, but we kind of don't generally, aside from action, but that's kind of referring to a different thing than it is in film. So in games, genre is usually more limited to the technical aspects of the gameplay. So you might hear first-person shooter or 2D platformer, right? And we use another term in this course called theme to talk about sort of the narrative aspect of games. So theme in games falls a lot more closely along that track of what in film would be called genre. So we can look at some common genre constructors. These would be words that you can mash together to form some kind of unique genre for your game. So the first constructor is perspective. So something like first person, third person, top down. You hear that a lot, right? Dimensionality. So that's 2D, 3D, isometric, VR, AR, if you want to get into that. And you might talk about the major activity that you're doing. And this is where it sometimes coincides with a film genre. So you might have racing, role-playing, shooting, platforming, battle royale. Those are a little more specific in terms of what you'll actually be doing. We can talk about control scheme. So twin stick, arcade style, one button. I had another one for this and I forget what it was. The number of players. So you can talk about single player games, multiplayer, massively multiplayer, co-op, couch co-op, party. You can get pretty specific there. And then genre proper, which again I feel sort of aligns with film genre a little bit. So you can have action, adventure, strategy, simulation, fighting, rhythm, puzzle, sports. They're a little more broad, but they do tend to describe you can imagine what a puzzle game is, what a rhythm game is, or a fighting game, right? And if you want to read further about this, Moby Games has just a really long list of genres and their definitions that they use. Moby Games is a website that, basically categorizes games. They catalog and categorize games. So they have a guide that you can look at as well if you're looking for ideas or you want to understand a genre a little more closely. we also use shorthands, right? So sometimes common genres get compressed kind of into a single phrase that like sort of combines both its genre and usually its game pillars, or like some of the core game loops, the mechanics that you're doing in the game. So you might hear words like Metroidvania or Souls-like or 4X, and those have long form descriptions that are kind of understood by their audience, although there are like things that you could argue about within each of those about whether it falls in the genre or not. So for example, a Metroidvania, if you decompress it, it's a third person, usually 2D, usually single player puzzle platforming experience. Its pillars, so pillars are something we're going to talk about next week, but its game pillars might be a contiguous map, a focus on exploration, combat, and movement. So the name comes from a combination of the Metroid and Castlevania series, which were the two series that define the genre. And that's often the case with these shorthands, is they're going to be named for whatever game like kind of came out first. A Souls-like is a third-person single-player exploration with role-playing elements game. Its pillars are challenging animation-based combat, failure as a core mechanic. The name comes from Dark Souls and the rest of the Soulsborne series, which kind of define the genre, though of course now it's like expanding. And combining. So you can have a game like Salt and Sanctuary, for example, that is a combination of a Metroidvania and a Souls-like to some degree, and is enjoyed by audiences that usually prefer either of those games. And I think it can be argued that Dark Souls is also a Metroidvania, but it's 3D, which is some people would consider a genre-breaking like definition. 4X game is a top-down strategy simulation, usually with procedurally generated environments. So its pillars are the 4X's, which are exploration, expansion, exploitation, and extermination. This name was coined by Alan Emmerich to describe games like Sid Meier's Civilization and Masters of Orion, which again popularized the genre. So note that within each of these genres, there's room to change the theming a lot. So if you think about the film thing again, the comedy or western or sci-fi or whatever, within 4X games, for example, the focus is usually on building a nation or an empire, but there are a range of settings from historical to space-based. So like if you look at Age of Empires versus Frostpunk versus Stellaris, those are all 4X games, but they can't really be described as having the same story or the same themes or the same, even aesthetic elements, right? If these were films, their genres would be categorized quite differently, but in games genre, again, mainly focuses on how the game is played. So if you have some time this week, I would love to start a discussion about what some of your favorite genres are, what the genres are that you're thinking about using for your capstone or for the GDD that you'll be making in the course. So do leave your thoughts in Discord, and we'll talk a little bit about your favorite genres. And I'll tell you right now, mine are Metroidvanias, RPGs, and currently farming and gardening sims. Yeah, let's talk about it.